Hi, welcome to our informational call on the Institutional Investment Accelerator. My name's Ellie Baumstein and I work for the Wallace Center and I'm calling in from Washington, D.C. Today we're going to talk a little bit about our motivations and goals for this program and then get into some logistics about the application and the timeline of the accelerator and also introduce you to the brilliant advisors we've partnered with on this program. The accelerator is part of Wallace Center's Food Systems Leadership Network. The FSLN is a national peer learning community that connects current and emerging leaders, strengthens individual and collective leadership capacity, and fosters collaboration across communities. The goal of the network is to accelerate the realization of a just, equitable, and sustainable food system that generates good food, health, and opportunity for all. We recently launched our new platform, which has tons of resources, tools to connect with your peers, and more details about this program and others. So please check it out after this call. It's at foodsystemsleadershipnetwork.org. Before we dig into the specifics of the program, I wanted to take a second to explain why we've created it and also define some terms. In Wallace Center's work supporting value chain enterprises and community-based nonprofits, institutions often come up as potential partners because they have a unique ability and maybe responsibility to support equitable, local, and sustainable supply chains. There has been an immense amount of work on cracking the code to institutional procurement, and we're really thankful for those who have led the way in this work, including the Center for Good Food Purchasing, Healthcare Without Harm, the Democracy Collaborative, Farm to Institution New England, and many others. Their work has been critical to both our understanding of these systems and also the design of this accelerator program that we're talking about today. But even with all of this work and so many dedicated people trying to understand how to make these connections, local purchasing is still an elusive target. More institutions are always making bold commitments about buying local, but it seems like very few ever actually achieve them. And there's a lot of reasons that these commitments fall through, but a large part of this challenge is a lack of systems infrastructure that's required to meet these commitments. Even when there's market demand in the form of institutional procurement, sometimes the supply chain just isn't there for local businesses to be able to meet that demand. Some regions don't have the hard infrastructure like sufficient cold storage that is required to meet the needs of large institutional purchases. Other times regions lack the soft infrastructure like coordinated networks of producers who could come together to meet the scale of demand from an institution. A lot of times these hospitals and universities are buying a really large quantity that's hard for an individual grower to meet. So, these systems gaps are even more challenging and protracted for Black, Indigenous, and other producers of color. They're often up against legacies of exclusionary financing, land losses and theft, failed support structures from USDA and other organizations that suppress these businesses and make it even harder for them to tap into these potentially really lucrative institutional markets. So we've been trying to think as an organization about how we might tackle these really big problems that have been a big problem for a long time, and are potentially preventing people from building a lot of wealth through institutions and investment from institutions. So we started looking around and learning about instances of the institutions themselves actually making investments in the pipeline of food businesses in that supply side so that they could match up with their demand. And that meant they weren't just relying on the demand and discovering the local supply chains, but they were actually building the local supply chains too. So we got really excited about this and started seeing examples of it popping up all over the country and decided to launch this institutional investment accelerator to better understand this practice and also to support it so that other folks can use institutional procurement and investment from those institutions to build wealth in their communities. Our goal with the accelerator is to identify these projects and also support the organizations implementing them in their communities. And the ultimate goal here is to drive institutions to use their resources to address barriers in the supply chain that limit BIPOC-owned businesses and their ability to sell to these institutions. So it's really about wealth building and building up this pipeline so that organizations and businesses and community can take advantage of that supply from the institutions where they live. So I did want to take a second to just define some terms. Institutions and investment are both very sort of loaded words. So for the purposes of the accelerator, when we talk about institutions, we're pretty specific in what we're looking for. We're really looking for projects with universities, hospitals, and governments. obviously farm to school is a huge market, and, farm to K through 12 is a really big opportunity for local food. But there's a lot of regulations, a lot of policy that sort of complicates those supply chains, and they don't really fit into like an investment framework in the same way that a university or a hospital might have an endowment. Oftentimes a school system doesn't have that same pot of funds that they can invest. So we're not really seeking out farm to K through 12 projects with this accelerator. We're really specifically thinking about universities, hospitals, and governments. On the other hand, when we use the term investment here, we're sort of swinging in the opposite direction and taking a really broad stance about what we mean by that word. A few examples could be a hospital making an equity investment in a farmer co-op. So a hospital really taking some of their own funds and directly becoming an investment partner in a cooperative business. It could also be a university hiring a person that is in charge of value chain coordination to make the system sort of align to their demand, or maybe a university paying for a feasibility study for some kind of business or a hard infrastructure in their community, or a college even building their own cold storage that's meant specifically to allow small producers to aggregate product that's going to supply their cafeteria. So institution, we're taking a sort of narrow view, and investment, we're taking a really broad view. With all of that sort of framing and background in mind of sort of how we got here and why we're taking this approach, I'm going to hand it over to my colleague, Andrew Carberry, who's going to talk a little bit more about the specifics of the program and what we're looking for, and also the arc of the accelerator. Take it away.
All right, thanks, Ellie, and good. Thanks for the overview. So I'll get into some of the structure of the program. As Ellie was explaining, it is a long game, and so this is a longer program for us to do. It's an 18-month accelerator, and there will be 6 teams, each with 3 team members, and we're encouraging those to be representative of the supply chain, the team that is working on the challenge with our institution. So that can include an institutional partner, supply chain partner, as well as community-based organizations, and others that are working on that specific challenge. Each team will be paired with an advisor. So we've got 3 advisors we'll introduce shortly, and they will focus on 2 teams. You'll have a primary advisor, but there will also be lots of opportunities for cohort-wide learning and for advisors to work across teams. So we're hoping that can be a shared experience, but the one advisor can really help with accountability for their team. As far as support for the teams, there will be $10,000 in flexible funding. So that's to help as you identify strategies and goals along the way that can help you get started in implementing those as a group. We'll also have monthly all teams calls throughout, where there'll be different peer coaching opportunities and trainings I'll explain in a minute, but those will help keep everyone on track and keep sharing across the whole cohort, as well as regular support from the advisors. So you'll have one-on-one support from an advisor monthly or even bi-monthly as you're going through. In terms of gatherings, we'll have a virtual kickoff gathering this year in May or June, or a series in those months, depending on the flexibility of the teams. And then hopefully we'll be able to do in-person meetings later on or sometime soon, but we'd love to do an in-person site visit to explore models and get together and kind of pick something apart, as well as the Wallace Center's 2022 annual conference. And then, so that travel will be covered for teams to those 2 site visits, as well as the setup for the virtual event. All right, so the phases of the program, once teams are selected, then we'll do some initial call to get everyone on the same page and talk about how we'll communicate and the structure of the advisor of the accelerator in depth. And then we've got a couple of trainings lined up that us and the advisors think will be critical to anyone working and doing this work, including power analysis, as well as goal setting and just developing a really strong strategy. So we'll do those early on. And then as teams begin to design their strategies and go further, we've left more flexibility in the work plan here, so that we'll, with the advisors as well as us, have a lot of tools we can pull from to support teams along the journey. But throughout, we know we'll have regular calls with the teams and advisors, and then as well as our all team calls. And that technical assistance will come in, later as the strategies are being developed. We can see what's really needed and line that up for teams. As well, you can see here the gatherings, our kickoff, our learning journey and conference. So hopefully those we'll get to be in person. All right, if you can go to the next slide. For the application process, some of the criteria are just that we're looking for 3 team members that have worked together before, that this isn't the first thing they've done. So including explaining that relationship and the story of the team is part of the application, as well as racial diversity of the teams. As Ellie mentioned, we are focused on looking to support Black, Indigenous, and people of color owned businesses and farms. So we were looking for that representation in teams as well. And then each team will have a lead contact person that will communicate with the Wallace Center throughout, just to coordinate on things. Let's see, as far as the process, applications are open until February 1st. And then the Wallace Center and the advisors will work together. So we'll do some initial screening, and then advisors will review, and all together we will make the decision on the cohort. So the advisors will be co-selecting with us. And there will be interviews for finalists the week of February 23rd to 25th. We've got some windows, but as you're applying, if you can, as a team, keep an eye on that week to keep some openings for us to get together and talk. Some tips for your application. One is just to be real, like this is a emerging, for us, especially, practice and something that we want to hear. There's a lot of challenges around. So let us know what your challenges are and what's the thing you're trying to change. Also, we really encourage you to read. There's on our website that we'll share later. Read through the accelerator and some of the criteria around teams, and consider why this is right for your team, because it is a pretty specific opportunity, and we want to make sure we're supporting the right group of folks for that. Let's see, some other tips are just including the community perspective in your team and on your application as well. So making sure you're sharing that through what you write. And then think about what you can accomplish through this accelerator that otherwise you couldn't. So like, what is this support really going to do to change things for your team? Ellie, is there anything else you want to say about the application review? You're muted.
Yeah. So Andrew kind of hinted at this, but one thing that we've heard and learned from talking to folks on the ground that are working on institutional projects is that these things take a long time. Sometimes, it's 3 to 5 years of working to get into a supply chain before you actually make that first sale. So one thing that's really important is that we understand that in the 18 months of this accelerator, we're probably not going to be able to go through that whole process of coming up with the idea, establishing the relationships, breaking down the barriers between the producers and the institution, and then really getting to that sale. So we're ideally hoping to support teams that are kind of in the flow. We're looking to, find things that are kind of percolating or getting going, and this is going to be that accelerant that really takes you through to the finish line. So think about that as you're applying. Think about what you maybe have already achieved together as a team and what might be reasonable to achieve in an 18-month period, with an understanding that it's going to take a long time to unlock these systems, and we may not be able to completely change everything. So we're looking for things that are sort of already in process.
Awesome, thanks. And then also looking at the key dates here, you also want to think about the team's ability to participate throughout. So the end date is July of 2022. And there's a lot of uncertainty for sure, but just thinking about your workload and things, that you really have time to engage in this opportunity with us as you apply. Otherwise, I think that the dates are here. Ellie, I'll hand it back to you for the advisors.
Okay. So one of the components of this program that I think we're the most excited about is that we have partnered with 3 expert advisors who are going to serve as your coach, your mentor. They're going to make network connections for you. They're going to be a strategy consultant. They're going to keep you accountable. So you're going to have access to these brilliant leaders who have deep and broad experience and expertise in food systems development, in community development and community organizing, and they all have great experience in partnering with institutions. So this is one of the biggest value adds that you're going to get as a participant. So each team is going to be paired with a specific advisor that's you're going to really develop a deep relationship with them. But as Andrew said, we're hoping that all of you are going to be able to take advantage of all of these advisors' expertise because it is varied. So I'm going to just briefly introduce the folks that are serving as advisors in this program so you can get a sense of what we have on the table. So first up is Hailey Johnston, who is the co-director and one of the founders of Common Market, which is a nonprofit distribution enterprise that connects communities to good food from sustainable family farms. Hailey is a graduate of the University of Pennsylvania's Wharton School of Business and currently serves as the advisory board chair of the National Farm to School Network and is on the steering committee of the Castanea Fellowship. Hailey is going to lend his 20 years of experience in community power building to support teams and use his expertise in urban agriculture, entrepreneurship, wholesale value chains, facilities, logistics, institutional procurement, and relationships with food service management companies to support the teams he advises. So he really knows his stuff. The next advisor is Lucia Sayre. Lucia is the Director of Regional Innovation and Community Resilience for the Healthy Food and Healthcare Program of Healthcare Without Harm. She provides leadership, vision, and direction for the Healthy Food and Healthcare regional programs in the Western US, and they're working to engage the healthcare sector in cultivating best practices for supporting, advocating for, and investing in healthy and sustainable food systems. We're particularly excited to have Lucia because she has experience in partnering with the Emerald Cities Collaborative, and they're co-creating an Anchors in Resilient Communities project, which sort of exemplifies this type of institutional investment that we're looking for here. So that's really exciting to have her expertise. She brings 25 years of experience in healthy food and community organizing and will share her expertise in both strategic planning, food system development, anchor institution partnership development, and institutional purchasing to the accelerator. And last but certainly not least is Paku Hong, who is our third advisor, and she's a co-founder and former executive director of the Hmong American Farmers Association, which is a nonprofit in Minnesota that works with Hmong American farmers and Hmong farmers to build community wealth and health. Paku has over 25 years experience in growing fresh produce with her family and also selling that produce at local farmers markets. She's served on the Minneapolis Food Council and the St. Paul Farmers Market Board of Directors and is currently serving as the Chief Program Officer for Vote Run Lead, which is a national nonprofit that trains women to run for public office. Paku uses an equity framework in this work, and she'll bring her expertise in community organizing and her experience in power building, running a farm, a multi-market food hub, and a community-based nonprofit to support the teams. So these guys are the real deal, and we're really excited to allow you to be able to access their expertise and experience and work with them closely. So that's a pretty comprehensive overview of this program and our thought process behind it, what you'll be able to take advantage of when you participate, and the kinds of teams that we're looking for. However, we know that it's a pretty complicated and specific program, so we want to make sure that we're able to answer your questions. If we didn't cover something that you're wondering about, please feel free to reach out to us. The best version of that is by sending an email to fslninfo@winrock.org, and we'll do our best to turn those emails around quickly because we want to make sure that you all have time to put together a really competitive and comprehensive application. We also wanted to just say that we're really grateful for all of the support and guidance that we received from the advisors and also all of our partner organizations and other leaders in this field that have helped us shape this program and conduct outreach to teams so that we know that we're really helping folks that are driving change in their communities. And again, check out the foodsystemsleadershipnetwork.org website where you can find more details about this program and all of our other work. And that's also where you'll find the link to the application, which we'll also put in the YouTube description underneath this video. And with that, Andrew, anything else to add?
Thanks for watching, everybody, this recorded video. Look forward
Yeah,
to seeing your applications.
yeah. All right, wonderful. Thanks, everybody. And we look forward to, seeing your application.